So let's take a look at our second matchup for the Casting Coliseum. We have an interesting and a very competitive matchup between Bosmapar and Satalution. Let's take a look at Bosmapar. A little bit of history on him, our player card for Bosmapar. Bosmapar hails from Anaheim, California. He has 15 years of TCG experience. He has a sealed IQ top 8. A 5 Shards Weekly winner, third place in the 5 Shards Weekly Series finale. He's considered a well-rounded player, and he likes to play all decks in all formats. You can find Bosmapar on twitch.tv/Bosmapar. Now let's take a look at his deck. Another mono deck or mono be good deck. The troops in Bosmapar's deck, he's playing 4 Killipedes, 4 Vampires, and of course 4 Vampire Princesses, 3 Monsoon Shoguns of the Windigen, 4 Giant Corpse Flies, and for his actions, playing 4 kills, 4 Vampiric Kisses, 3 Extinctions, 4 Inquisitions, and 2 Packs of Pain, playing a single artifact, which is the Chaos Key, 4 Star Spheres round out his resource pool of 19 Blood Shards, and he's playing the champion Cranach with a starting health pool of 21, and with double blood threshold, he can pay 4 to pay 2 health and draw a card. Let's, Nathan, break down this version of Mono Be Good.
Sure thing. So this, Mono Be Good is the term I like to call for any blood deck that has a bunch of good stuff in it and uses that plus board wipes like Extinction or hand control like Inquisition to take its victory. However, looking at Bosmapar's version of the Mono Be Good deck, you can see that it is a deck that is designed for a heavy blood meta. Things like Killipede and Monsoon are directly counters to other forms of blood control. An early Monsoon prevents your troops from dying, and Extinction stops becoming useful. And so you can put out crucial vampires early and potentially even get them through unscathed. Same with Killipede. In a board wipe, all that's good, but a single Killipede that's on the board for 2 turns without being blocked, that's victory. And so he's really capitalizing on some of these powerful single drop troops that can change the game and control in the form of kills, Vampire Kisses, the Chaos Key, and even the Extinction to back them up.
Absolutely. So let's head over to Satalution. Take a look at our player card for him. He hails from Germany. He is 27 years old. He has multiple years of TCG experience. He's considered a versatile player and has no preferred style of play. His tournament history includes a 2nd place in the Rock League Season 3. He won the Wild Cup Season 1, was top 8 in the Cup of Fate Season 1, and of course, the IQ number 12 champion. And for a fact, he says he is not interesting. Let's take a look at Satalution's deck, who's playing the Windslinger deck. For his troops, he's got 2 Arborean Rootfathers, 2 Windsingers, Master of the Hunts, 2 Crocosaurs, a single Reese the Crustcrawler, 2 Brown Fox Scouts, 2 Carnosaurs. That'll round out his troops. For his actions, playing a Mass Polymorph Dingler, 3 Epiphanies, a single Suffocate, 4 Counter Magics, 4 Chlorophyllias, 4 Peaks, a single Verdict of the Ancient Kings, and 4 Arcane Focus. His resource pool includes 4 Shards of Instincts, and his champion is Winter Moon with a starting health pool of 21. Requires a Sapphire and Wild Threshold. He can pay 2 and put up to 2 target cards from his crypt into his deck, and those cards get, when you play this, draw a card. Break down this Winter Moon deck for us, Nathan.
Windslinger, I love it. So first off, I have to say, Satalution says he might not be interesting, but he is certainly pedigree. That is a lot of tournaments to his name, and I think this deck that he's playing really shows some of that understanding of the meta. Windsinger style decks, these Winter Moon, Windslinger style decks, they really exploded onto the scene in set 3 and took a disproportionate number of top IQ spots. I think 2, maybe even 3 of our IQ slots were taken by decks just like this one. They focus primarily on a lot of permission, things like Counter Magic, Suffocate, and the like. Building your board up to the Windsinger. The Windsinger comes down on the board, and then you use all the card advantage that is accrued from Windsinger to take the game. It's a very strong deck, has been tends to have a little bit longer matches, and crucially, you're vulnerable in the early game. So we're going to see if Boston Par's Blood variant can put the pressure on fast enough to get around all of Sadalution's Nope.
All right, so we're going to get ready for this matchup. Bosmopar versus Sadalution in game number 2 of the Casting Coliseum. Interesting matchup indeed. Who do you think has the advantage between these two decks, Nathan?
It's really difficult to say. I've seen them go either way. One thing I can add is that Bosmopar has a lot of hand destruction, and if you're going to win against a Wintermoon deck or a Windslinger deck, hand destruction is one of the more successful ways to go. So perhaps that's going to be enough for Bosmopar to take the day, but again, perhaps not. Wintermoon is a versatile deck. We'll see it in action here.
So coin toss is won by Sadalution, so he'll decide to go first. We'll check out opening hands. Starting hand for Bosmopar is 4 Blood Shards, a Chaos Key, Vampire King, and Vampire Princess. Opening hand for Sadalution looks like to be a single Sapphire Shard, Arcane Focus, Chlorophylla, Epiphany. Decides to go ahead and mulligan down to 6, sitting on a single Sapphire, a single Wild, Peak, Verdict of the Ancient King, Arcane Focus, and a Time Ripple.
I like that hand so much better. I mean, the early Arcane Focus is great because it allows you to fish for, top 2 cards, get to look for something that's going to help you later down the line. It's a great opening for any Sapphire using deck.
Absolutely. So plays out the Sapphire, uses Arcane Focus, is going to select a card to put in his hand. The other one will go back into his deck. And we'll see what card Sadalution picks.
It's cut off here. It looks like it's a hard choice, whatever it is. Going for a Shard of Instinct.
Yeah. So passes the turn back over to Bosmopar, plays a Blood Shard now, and will pass the turn back over to Sadalution.
Sadalution has a number of answers. It's the Nope that I'm talking about. His Verdict of the Ancient Kings, of course, and Time Ripple. It's a pretty good place to be, as Time Ripple takes care of the Vampire Princess.
Draw for Sadalution is a Crocosaur, and will pass the turn back over to Bosmopar, plays a second Blood Shard, and will play out the Chaos Key and pass the turn back over to Sadalution.
I actually really like the inclusion of Chaos Key against Wintermoon. One thing that you always have to look out in Wintermoon is those counters, are those interrupts. And Chaos Key, once it gets on the board, cannot be interrupted.
Wild Shard for Sadalution passes the turn. Bosmopar will play a Blood Shard now at 3 resources. Will play the Vampire Princess. And looks like he's going to pass the turn. We'll see if Sadalution is going to activate Peak. He does. So Peak, he's going to be able to look at the top 2 cards of his deck, select one and put it to his hand. And we'll see what he selects.
Interesting. I mean, using Peak now does force Time Ripple next turn, most likely, just because you got to have some kind of answer. Otherwise, you are gambling that a Vampire Princess doesn't take one of your many actions in hand.
So back over to Sadalution. Looks like he's going to Time Ripple. Nope, not sure what he's doing. Reorganizing his cards.
And he's thinking about it. I mean, the Arcane Focus, as long as you have the resources to do both, an early Arcane Focus is not bad, right? You can always decide once you know what is going to be in your hand for the turn.
Does Arcane Focus, selects a card. It's a Suffocate. He's going to activate his champion ability to recycle 2 cards, put him back into his deck. Shard of Instinct is played. Going to gain the threshold. It's a Wild, sitting at double Sapphire, double Wild threshold, 2 resources in hand. Of Time Ripple is online.
Interesting. So this is actually really clever because against Blood, there's no way to stop that Time Ripple usually. Counters are really the primary way of interrupting something. And so Sadalution is hoping that Bosmopar is going to make a mistake and play something out and then lock the vampire in his hand.
Draw for Bosmopar is a Blood. He'll play it, go to 4 resources, swing in with the Vampire Princess, and Time Ripple is played by Sadalution. That Vampire Princess is going to go back into Bosmopar's hand and is now a 4-cost Vampire Princess. And the play looks like he's looking at Killipede, and he does. Killipede will come on the board for Bosmopar, and will pass the turn back over to Satalution.
This is a really terrifying drop for Satalution.
Brown Fox Scout is the play. Sapphire Shard goes down, is now at 3 resources, triple Sapphire, double Wild. It's going to shuffle the Arcane Focus and Time Ripple back into his deck using his champion ability. And looks like he's going to pass the turn back over to Bosmanpar. Jaws a giant Corpse Fly. Will play a Blood Shard now at 5 resources. Can use his champion ability to draw a card at the cost of 2 health. Going to swing in with that Killipede. It does get Swift Strike when it attacks. So a 1/5 lethal, and is blocked by the Brown Fox Scout, and it will go to the crypt.
I have to say, the Brown Fox Scout was a great pickup by Satalution. He needed that. Otherwise, it would have died very quickly. Oh, opening up the possibility for a Crocosaur here.
Absolutely. Tunnels Monsoon plays out Giant Corpse Fly and will pass the turn back over to Satalution. Draw for Satalution is an Arborean Rootfather.
That may be a little bit of an overextension, except Satalution discarded his shard, which means he does not have the threshold for Crocosaur.
He did indeed. He drew the same Rootfather with the cycle, so he has a 5-cost Arborean Rootfather in his hand. So the odds of that cycling back into his hand, awesome pickup for Satalution.
Wow, minuscule. I mean, well, you know, it's a stopgap measure, right? He does still need that wild threshold. Otherwise, he is going to lose without another troop to just chump block that Killipede. This is what I was talking about. He's swinging twice, the game is over.
Cycles the Rootfather, gets a Sapphire, plays it, passes a turn. Bosmapar going to swing in with an attack with the Killipede and the Giant Corpse Fly. That's going to be 3 damage, but more importantly, that's going to put a toxification counter on Satalution.
And those toxification counters, if you get toxified twice by the Killipede, that does the words are destroys the champion. You're dead. You're gone.
Draw for Satalution is a Chlorophilia, so that will give him the wild resource he needs. More importantly, that triple wild threshold, and Crocosaur is online and is going to come down and attack both the Killipede and the Giant Corpse Fly. But unfortunately for him, Bosmapar is the kill, and that is it. Tables are flipped, and Bosmapar takes game number 1 in this Casting Coliseum. Let's go ahead and take a look at reserves for both players. Bosmapar is playing 4 Zentos Inquisitors in his reserves with a single Chaos Key, 3 Curse of Oblivion, 3 more Fentio the Brood Priest, and 4 Rotcasts. What are some options here for Bosmapar to side in?
Typically, when you're looking at a Wind Slinger deck, or Winter Moon, as it's more colloquially called, Curse of Oblivion, Fenteo, and Chaos Key are all solid options. As we saw earlier, you know, you drop the Chaos Key down, it cannot be countered or often isn't countered early, and then you can use it to remove something that otherwise, you know, your kill or your extinction or whatever would simply be interrupted. And so it's a great way to guarantee removal on the field. The second thing, Curse of Oblivion. Winter Moon is all about returning actions and or troops to the deck. Curse of Oblivion doesn't get rid of whatever is coming down, but crucially, it does void all other copies. So, you know, often the engines of a Winter Moon deck are things like the Arcane Focus, are things like Peak that allow you to filter through your deck and search for what you need. If you remove those, it is a serious hindrance to the Winter Moon player. Finally, Fenteo. Fairly useful, fills a deck with Tarantula Eggs. There's not much more to be said.
All right, let's go over to Satalution. He's playing a single Archmage Renlock in his reserves with 2 Succulent Cluckodons, a Side of the Sun, and 2 Carnosaurus. As far as actions, reserves another a Mass Polymorph Dingler, Incubation Web, Suffocate, Cripple, 2 Scorns of Oberon, 2 Turbulence, and a Burden to the Ancient Kings. What are some options here for siding in for Satalution?
There are a number of good ones. Mass Polymorph Dingler is pretty powerful if you get up to the highest number of resources. My eye's immediately drawn to Turbulence. Turbulence is a great way of dealing with those bloodsuckers. Just swat them out of the air, boom, they're gone. Great tech. Another thing I might look at is actually Cripple. Cripple takes care of the Killipede, which was the major tech that won Bosmapar his game. So either Cripple or Incubation Webs, I would say are high up, or should be high up on the list.
All right, so both players have done their reserves. We're going to game number 2. Bosmapar is up a game. over Satalution. Satalution is going to go first. Opening hand for Bosmapar is 4 Blood Shards, an Inquisition, Pact of Pain, and Vampire King on Satalution's side. Opening hand is double Sapphire, Arcane Focus, Time Ripple, 2 Brown Fox Scouts, and a Arborean Rootfather. That Sapphire Shard's going to go down. We should see an Arcane Focus, and we do. Satalution will be able to choose one of 2 cards off the top of his deck.
I have to say, keeping this hand, it seems a little bit risky, but with the Arcane Focus, you can hunt for that wild threshold, which you need. And Arborean Rootfather, crucially, doesn't require any threshold to cycle. So if he really needs to, he can toss that back into the deck and find something useful.
Turn passes back over to Bosmapar, plays a Blood Shard, pass the turn back over to Satalution. His draw. It's a peak. Looks like he's going to play the second Sapphire. Now it does have double Sapphire threshold, 2 resources. And we'll pass the turn back over to Bosmapar.
This is actually an interesting move. I like it. I think particularly because it keeps the Time Ripple open and also threatens a verdict of some kind.
Blood Shard is the play for Bosmapar. It now will use Inquisition.
Satalution can respond to this with either Peak or Arborean Rootfather. So if he really wants to save something, he can. The threat, of course, is that you draw into something better that you also don't want removed. So you can see Satalution thinking about this. Does he search for something, or does he just let it go through?
What would you do in this situation, Nathan?
It's really tough. I mean, on the one hand, your win con is the Arborean Rootfather. If you make it cheap, you can get it out very early. And indeed, I think you see him doing that right there.
So Arborean Rootfather is cycled back in the deck. It's replaced with a Wild Shard. So now Bosmapar has to decide what is going to be the card he wants to put into the Crypt. It looks like it's going to be Crypt versus Time Ripple. So Crypt will, the Peak will go into the Crypt and pass the turn back over to Satalution. Draw is a Chlorophilia. We'll play the Wild Shard.
I think that was a wise choice. The Brown Fox Scout can't get through the Vampire King, which can come down in just 2 more turns.
Satalution sitting at double Sapphire, double Wild, threshold, 2 resources, and will pass the turn back over to Bosmapar. His draw is a Giant Corpse Fly. We'll play the Blood. Looks like he's going to tunnel a Monsoon, and that'll end his turn and pass it back over to Satalution.
And Giant Corpse Fly is just such great tech against the Winter Moon matchup. I think specifically because Time Ripples, you don't want to Time Ripple a Corpse Fly. It's just such an unattractive option.
Before the end of Bosmapar's turn, a Brown Fox Scout comes onto the board for Satalution, plays that Shard of Instinct, will grab a threshold. It is a Sapphire, so triple Sapphire, double Wild Threshold, Peak, Time Ripple, and another Brown Fox Scout in hand. Going to swing in for 3 damage. That'll bring Bosmapar down to 18. And it looks like he's going to pass a turn over to Bosmapar. Draws an Inquisition.
You don't see Brown Fox Scout all that often in a Winter Moon deck. And I think that really highlights sort of Satalution's off-the-wall deck building. It's a nice choice, I think, specifically because you're looking at a quick troop. And so you can keep counters up, you can keep your peaks up, things like that, and play the Scout exactly when it's needed.
Giant Corpse Fly is the play for Bosmapar. Peak in response to that draws a Counter Magic. So Counter Magic, Time Ripple, and Brown Fox Scout in Satalution's hand. He has to discard 1.
Yeah, it's a rough choice, especially since he's got to know that a Monsoon is currently tunneled. I mean, tunneling has the advantage of hiding what's coming down, but there are only so many blood tunnelers in the current constructed meta. So Satalution has to know that if the Corpse Fly dies, it's going to happen again, and it's going to come right back. It has one of those deception counters on it, and it will remove yet another card from his hand.
Satalution having to make a tough choice here to decide which of the 3 cards in hand he's going to get rid of. Time Ripple, Brown Fox Scout, or the Counter Magic, and it looks like it's going to be Time Ripple. So Time Ripple will go to the Crypt if he does select it, and he does. And now Bosmapar, with a single resource remaining, will pass the turn back over to Satalution. His draw, before the end of his turn, though, will play that Brown Fox Scout. So 2 Brown Fox Scouts, and now the start of Satalution's turn draws an Epiphany.
Quick Brown Scout. I have to really commend that line of play on Satalution's part. Keeping the counter magic up is actually really important, because if you counter a Monsoon, anything that has counters on it, deception counters, will not come back. So that's actually a pretty solid line of play. However, Bosmar does have a second Monsoon, and if Satalution does that, the counters will remain. So you can hard cast a Monsoon, and anything with counters will come back from the crypt. It's actually a really clever play that not many people know about.
Swinging in with both Brown Fox Scouts, Bosmapar decides to block with a Giant Corpse Fly. Passes the turn back over to Bosmapar, draws a Blood Shard, plays a Blood Shard, now is at 5, will activate his champion ability, pay 2 health and draw a card, and it's a Vampire Princess and an Inquisition against Satalution.
Oh, that's rough. Drawing into the Inquisition was exactly what Bosmapar needed. You basically have to counter it, because it's either lose your counter for nothing, right, or lose make his Inquisitions a little bit more expensive. It's a pretty easy choice.
Vampire Princess played for Bosmapar, passes the turn back over to Satalution. Hand still has a wild resource, or has a wild resource Epiphany and Cripple in hand.
I mean, he's got a limited number of turns for that Monsoon happens. So if he can bait a block with the Brown Fox Scout swinging in, potentially, you might see. Yep, there we go. There's the swing.
So a swing with the Brown Fox Scout. Vampire Princess going to block, and Satalution going to activate Cripple on the Vampire Princess, makes it to a -2 attack. So no damage to the Brown Fox Scout, and the Vampire Princess goes to the crypt. Wild Shard played out for Satalution, 2 resources remaining. Going to activate his champion power and recycle 2 cards to go back into his deck.
And this is pretty important because, again, as I was saying earlier, Satalution doesn't know about the second Monsoon. And so, he's got to be hoping for a counter so he can stop all of these troops from coming back.
Draw for Bosmapar is a Vampire Princess. He'll play out a Vampire King. 1 resource remaining for Bosmapar, and passes the turn back over to Satalution. His draw, it's a Chlorophilia. He'll play that. After, well, it looks like he's going to play Epiphany first and draw some cards.
Looking for counter. Oh, he was so close.
Counter Magic and Shard of Instinct for Satalution.
And so he's hunting for a basic shard. A basic shard would allow him to keep that counter up. It was almost, but not quite, the perfect draw there.
Will play the Chlorophilia, is only on 1 resource open, and the counter magic not going to be able to be used. Bosmapar's turn starts. Monsoon is revealed, and now the Giant Corpse Fly and Princess come back. Giant Corpse Fly is going to force Satalution to discard the resource. Draw is a Vampiric Kiss, and that is going to make short work of that Brown Fox Scout. Brings Bosmapar up to 15 health, and we're going to see a swing in with the Vampire King and the Monsoon. That is going to be 8 damage. That'll bring Satalution down to 13, bring Bosmapar up to 18, reveals the counter magic in hand, and Bosmapar will end his turn.
This is sort of the tipping point. A lot of control matchups end up like this, where you have a bit of an advantage until one side stabilizes, and then one's health goes down rapidly. Yeah, I think Satalution has to hope in the next turn or two, because he can survive, right? It'll be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. He'll be at 1.
Yeah, things do not look good for Satalution at this time. Looks like he's going to activate his champion ability. Arcane Focus and Epiphany will go back into his deck.
I think he's got to be looking for a Crocosaur into some kind of card, like a card draw that can take care of the Corpse Fly. That's about the best thing you can hope for.
Bosmapar draws a kill. Now 12 damage inbound. That'll bring Satalution down to 1 health. Bosmapar 21. And it looks like Bosmapar is going to play another Vampire Princess onto his field. Counter Magic is going to stop that for Satalution. He draws into a Turbulence.
Oh, that was one of the cycled counter magics. Nice.
So Bosmapar with 2 resources remaining. Kill, Pact of Pain, and Monsoon in hand.
Turbulence is a little bit too little at this point. With 1 health, you need some way to get rid of all the threats on the board, and Turbulence certainly is not it.
Sadalution is going to Turbulence onto the Vampire King. Draw for him is a Sapphire Shard, not going to help him. And this matchup is going to be over. Sadalution is defeated by Bosmapar 2-0 in this matchup of the Casting Coliseum. Bosmapar, the Gladiator, walking away with the victory. Great matchup there. What do you think of that matchup between Bosmapar and Sadalution?
I have to say, it just goes to show how versatile Blood Control is. And, the Mono Be Good deck has been around since set 1 in some variant or another, pretty much because of the Vampire Kings. But it's evolved and changed over the years and with the sets that have been released. And I think this one is a form of Mono Be Good, very carefully honed for a meta that has a lot of Blood and a lot of Winter Moon. And I think we really saw that. In particular, Killipede was an MVP in game number 1. And then that Corpse Fly plus Monsoon combo, so incredibly harsh for anything that might try rippling or any just normal troop destruction. You can't deal with it if it just comes back and also eats another card from your hand. It's really great tech.
Absolutely. So it looks like that matchup is in the books.